915 Talk is a production of Desert Voice Media. You can visit desertvoice.media to learn more.
915 TALK.
The world is looking at El Paso.
What will we say to the world? From the KELP studio in El Paso, this is 915 Talk.
And now your host.
Good afternoon, beautiful citizens of the borderland. This is 915 Talk, and I'm your host, Andy Frecka. Today we are broadcasting yet again from the heart of the world's largest borderplex, and we have Mac Daddy Del Norte on the board. Mac Daddy, how you doing this afternoon?
Hey, Andy, I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
You know, as I have confessed multiple times, my vocabulary falls painfully short to describe the wonder and joy of this educational journey we have embarked upon as we learn to love our city, love our neighbors, and give God all the glory.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
and you know, Mac Daddy, normally we have guests from right here in El Paso.
That's correct.
But today our conversation will be with someone who's far, far away in the far-flung regions of Central Florida.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
That is a long distance, actually.
yeah, you know, it's one of those things where folks will sometimes write me and say, hey, I want to tell you about what I'm doing. I want to go on the radio there in El Paso. And we look at those, and occasionally we're like, yeah, our audience needs to hear this. And this is one of those situations where our audience does need to hear it.
Nice.
I'm looking at a book right now. And on the front of the book, there's a Mothers Against Drunk Driving poster.
Okay.
And there's a man in a wheelchair on the poster, and it says, I drove drunk. I got the chair for life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that gives you an idea of what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah.
But
man, that just gave me the chills.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where when we talk about these kind of painful, difficult stories, there's also profound hope.
Yeah.
And the book is called Beyond the Chair. So there is hope beyond the chair, thriving through the transition with God. Also, we have photos of the author with Ronald Reagan. Quite a journey our guest has been on. And I think our community here in the borderland needs to hear this conversation.
Definitely.
So without further ado, let's give a very warm borderland welcome to the one, the only, Hector del Valle. Hector, welcome to 915 Talk.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and meet you, Andy.
Yeah, so like I said, we do get, different folks who will write us and say, hey, I want to come on the program and this and that. And somehow your book and your story really popped out. And I thought, hey, we need to be talking about this. So take us back to 17-year-old Hector.
I was excited to be alive. I was excited to move out of my house. I was excited to graduate high school. It was September. It's a beautiful day, and it was, I was an excited kid. I grew up in a very religious family, Catholic, and I was an altar boy. I think I wasn't sure if I was still doing an altar boy my senior year in high school, but I was an altar boy. I did it all for the wrong reasons, just so I can sit up front, look at all the pretty girls in mass. I must admit that I did slip some of the wine when I took it down to the cellar and stuff like that. So I had all the wrong reasons to follow that at the time, but gymnastics is something that I love to do. And I was conflicted because I love to do gymnastics. I started around in the 7th or 8th grade. My cousin was doing gymnastics and I wanted to know how to do those flips. And he was doing them out at parks. And I was just this, kid in 7th grade, and I wanted to learn how to do it. And he took me in to his group, and his group had a great coach, gymnastics coach, taught me a lot of great things about being gymnastics. But as I started getting into high school, I got tempted by other things, drugs, all those other things started tempting me. And I started indulging and experimenting that by the time I was into my senior year in high school, I was already experimenting with drugs like cocaine and mescaline. and stuff like that. And when I got to my senior in high school, I was still doing gymnastics. As a matter of fact, they asked me to be their captain gymnastics team that year, that week. September 17th is when I had my accident of 1982. And that same week, that was a Friday night. And on that Monday, I met with my coach, and they were just about to give me my jacket and stuff like that. So I was excited. Puerto Rican dude.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so yeah, I think the picture you're painting here, the story you're telling is really kind of uh not perfect, but kind of what's expected out of many teenagers. You're talking about being an altar boy. I think a lot of our listeners go to church, and we see the young people in the church doing exactly what you're talking about. You know, maybe they're for the wrong reason, but for those of us who are older folks, we're hoping that at least some of what the message is rubbing off on these young folks, even if they're maybe going in the wrong direction. You were into gymnastics.
Yes,
So you were very active, but there was a darker side where you were being pulled into some addiction.
exactly. Exactly. And that was the battle. That was the battle, having to lie to my parents, having to lie to people, that I wasn't doing that. I'm a good kid, that was constantly my conflict. And you'll hear
Mm,
more in my story that was always my conflict
mm.
until God set me straight, in a very good way.
Yeah, okay. All right. So here we are, a conflicted young man, 17 years old, senior year of high school, right?
Senior year of high school. Yep.
Yeah, September. I remember September, my senior year of high school. I probably felt the same way. Last year, probably not looking to be super focused on academics, but
I'm lucky to be a C average.
yeah, right. Making it through. I think sometimes it's harder to have a C average than any other. You're just making it.
Right.
and you're looking forward to the freedom and the independence of right getting out of high school. And
Right.
there you are in September, and then what happened?
Well, it was a Friday night. It was September 17th, 1982. I was dating a girl who was a year older than me, and we were on the phone, and it just turned out to be one of those phone conversations, like, yep. So what are you doing? Nothing. What are you doing? Nothing. We were 17 years old. We really didn't have, we didn't have those skills of having a healthy relationship. I had no clue what I was doing, because I only had one thing on my mind, unfortunately, and that was sex, And
Mm,
so I'm talking to her on the phone, and we didn't have much to talk about. And then finally, I came out with she goes, "Well, why don't you come over?" I said, "Well, yeah, I could do that, but I'm going to hang out with my friends first, and just we're just going to kick it around, maybe go, I don't know, just hang out." And she was upset, and pretty much hung up the phone on me, because I gave up a night to be with her and just to hang out with her, which I should have been doing, but instead I chose to hang out with a bunch of guys who were, and I was no innocent part of that bunch. I had a fake ID that I was using from my cousin, and I got served alcohol that night. I got served a 6-pack with a fake ID, and we went back and we were hanging out behind of a roller skating alley. And I remember that specific night because I was having my car worked on. I had a 1972 Ford Maverick, and
okay.
I just had the mags put on it. I had a sound system in the back. I had speakers all over the place. I'm Puerto Rican. I had a little dog in the back that went like this. Because it was all about an image at 17.
Mm,
So I want to look that part. Just as John Travolta wanted to look like in Grease. And I wanted to look cool, man.
yeah.
Looking cool and being cool was the most important thing. Whether it was around my friends, whether it was girls. There was a lot of house parties going on in 1982 and so forth. I got to assist the DJ, so I usually got into all the house parties and stuff. And on that Friday night, I was hanging out with some guys. I got a 6-pack of beer. I was drinking my 6-pack of beer. Had a pair of very tight jeans on, and the guys said that they all wanted to go roller skating. I said, "There's no way, dude. I'm going to go roller skating in these jeans." So I decided to go home and get changed. And I went home. I got changed, and it was now about 11 o'clock, and it was kind of late to even go roller skating. But they did have late night roller skating there, so I was going out the door. And this part is difficult, Andy, because I was going out the door, and my mom was right at the couch, and she goes, "Hector, where are you going so late? Don't you have to go to work tomorrow?" Because it was Saturday, I was working on the weekends, and that's the other thing. I went to school during the day, and I got out at around 1 o'clock to go to work, and I got credited for that at work. And as a carpenter, I was working with a master carpenter. I was making more money than my dad. I was making like $300-400 a week from this job. And my mom is there, and she's sitting on the couch. She goes, "Where are you going?" I said, "Mom, I promise I'll be right back. Don't worry, I'll get to work tomorrow morning. Everything will be all right." That's the last thing I said to my mom. And so I left the house, and I'm driving my car back, thinking I'm going back to the roller skating rink. And as I told you, I was a carpenter's apprentice, and there was a building on Blackwell Street. I lived in Dover, New Jersey, small town in Jersey, and I was at a stoplight. And to the right of me was this new building that I was part of renovating it, working with a master carpenter. We renovated it. We put all new offices in there. There was lawyer offices on the bottom, and there were resident apartments on top. And on the side of that building, these two girls were hanging out on the fire escape. And I'm at the red light. I'm looking up. I got my sound system up. I'm playing Foreigner, and they hear the music, and they look down to me, and they smile. And I look up to them, and I smile back, and they're waving me over. "Come on over here," And I had to go. I had to go, and I went, and I parked my car, and I thought I'd be really cool. And instead of going through the front of the building inside like normal people do, I thought I would climb the fire escape. So I'm climbing the fire escape, and I'm now joining these two girls on the fire escape, and they were drinking amaretto, and they were a couple years older than me. Except for one of them. There were two girls there. One was younger, I think maybe a year or 2 years younger than me. I was 17, and there was a girl there, she was maybe 19 or 20. And we're drinking a bottle of amaretto. And once we finished that bottle, one of the girls knew where to get a joint, marijuana joint. And we got into my car. We drove there, like right down the street, and we smoked a marijuana joint. And I knew by the time I came out of that house, I knew something was wrong, because I said, "I'll be right back." And instead of going back into the house because I had to go to the bathroom, I thought I'd go on the side of the house and pee on the side of the bushes. And as I was taking this leak, I was wobbling back and forth. I knew at that time, I said it in my mind. I said it, to myself. I said, "Oh man, I'm really messed up. I shouldn't be driving." I was driving I haven't been listening for about 6 months, Andy. And I knew at that time that I shouldn't be driving, but I waved it off. I just said, "No, I'm all right. I'm all right." I took a couple deep breaths, let's go out, have some fun. Turned around, got to the car, got in my car. I had these two girls on a bucket seat in the front. The bucket seat was broken, and it didn't, every time that I would put on the brakes, it would slide forward. So I'd have to tell these girls, "Please put your feet on the ground, because if I have to put the brakes on, you need to stop yourselves from sliding forward." And I didn't have no seatbelts in my car. And, God works in mysterious ways, because 10 minutes later, I'm driving we had the munchies, of course, and we decided to drive to M&M Pizzeria, small pizzeria in Dover there. And we thought we'd stop there. And I never made it to the pizzeria. I was on 46. I'm 46 going east, I believe, towards, New York. New York was always a ride that I've taken before in my car throughout those 6 months to get into the city, to go to clubs, getting into clubs at 16, 17 years old with a fake ID. Nothing ever happened to me. I was intoxicated those times too, as well, sometimes, and nothing ever happened to me. This was a 5-minute ride to a pizzeria. And I was on 46, and apparently some guy came out. He went a little bit too far. I was intoxicated. I overreacted, overturned, ended up going on the wrong side of the highway with oncoming traffic. I ended up hitting two cars. and then I slide into a brick wall on the driver's side. And I got my steering wheel up against my ribs. Can't get out that way. Can't get out through the side because I'm up against a brick wall. I'm somewhat unconscious. All I remember was hearing the girls, "Watch out," and then me trying to control my car, ending up hitting those two cars. Anyway, I'm now trapped in my car, Andy, and all I can remember is I saw the sirens. That brick wall also had a fence going along it, and there was a fence above that. And on top of that fence, there was a football game going on. Dover High School and another team were playing. My high school was playing another team at a Friday night game. And there I was. Now I caused all this problem from the football game. To get all these people are coming around the car. Police started telling people to go back. You know, I remember a fireman there. I don't know what was going on. You know, this is stuff, a lot of this stuff was taught to me afterwards. But I do remember trying to figure out what's going on. I felt like I had good balance. I felt like I was just, didn't understand what was going on. And this fireman told me that he would have to put a blanket over my head because they had to cut my door with this thing called the jaws of life, and they would have to cut it open. And I just didn't understand why he was there, why he was putting this blanket over my head, what had happened. And I remember I came to again, and I was in the ambulance. And then I was being taken out of the ambulance, going into the emergency room, being rolled to the emergency room. I came to again. I was nauseous. I felt like I was going to puke. I was trying to tell the nurse, please, I think I'm going to throw up. And so this nurse, gives me something to throw up in. And she goes, "That's what you get for drinking and driving, son." And that's what I remember the night of my accident. And if you want to go on from there, I could tell you a little bit more from there.
Right. Okay. So if you're just joining us, we're with Hector del Valle. He's in the Orlando area. He's author of the book Beyond the Chair. We're talking about, this very painful story, of course. But as we said at the beginning of the program, it's also a story of hope that only the Lord can provide. We do need to take a break. We'll be back more with what happened next. Where do we go from here? But before we go into the break, this is your daily reminder that 915 Talk is a production of Desert Voice Media. The website is just that, desertvoice.media, and you can listen to this or any previous 915 Talk conversation on that website. We also have 915 Testify. We will overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of our testimony. I'm reminded of that even today as we're talking with Hector, hearing this painful story, but also, again, the power of God in that story, which is where we're going with the conversation. But God is moving both in Florida and here in El Paso in the borderland, and we do need to hear these stories so that we can overcome. So we're going to go into a break. Do not touch that dial.
We'll be right back. Don't touch that dial.
915 Talk is listener supported and is a production of Desert Voice Media. That's right. It's people just like you who make this program possible. Together with Desert Voice, you can learn how to better serve our neighbors and pray for our community. To become a Desert Voice Media partner, you can visit desertvoice.media. That's right. That's the website, desertvoice.media. Take a look and join us today in reaching our borderland for Christ.
Breaking worldwide news. You can now feed your mind, feed your soul with great Christian teaching and talk on Alexa. That's right. All you have to say is, "Hey Alexa, play KELP radio," and boom! Instant Christian teaching, talk, and truth 24/7.
915.
Testify.
So growing up, I actually grew up to be a Muslim, And it wasn't up until high school when I started going to church and I didn't know who Jesus Christ really was. It wasn't up until April of this past year in 2024 when I fully surrendered to Christ. I was an alcoholic. I was a man full of lust. I was just lost in the sinful nature of this world. And I didn't know how to comprehend certain things. I didn't know how to have a proper relationship. It was just tormenting me from the inside. But I'm here to tell you today that Jesus Christ changed my life for the better, serving at the capacity, knowing that I have a purpose and moving with that purpose because I know that the world is coming to an end soon. My name is Marvis Davis, and I'm here to tell you that if Jesus Christ did it for me, he could also do it for you too.
And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb
And by the word of their testimony.
desertvoice.media.
Greetings, KELP listeners. This is Terry Gray, pastor of Calvary Chapel, Sun City, and speaker on the Summons broadcast heard each weekday at 5 p.m. right here on this station. Calvary Chapel, Sun City is located at 960 West Borderland Road on the west side of El Paso. We hold services on Wednesday evenings at 7 and on Sunday mornings at 9 and 11. If you are without a church home, we would love to have you join us for worship and Bible study. You can find out more information about us on the web at www.ccsuncity.org.
We're back. You're listening to 915 Talk.
And we're back. This is 915 Talk. I'm your host, Andy Frecka. Today we're with Hector del Valle. He's in Florida. Not very often we have guests from out of town, but again, I saw his story, saw his book, and I thought, man, we need to have this conversation. It's super important for us, I believe, here in the borderland. Hector, before we continue the story, I'm just going to say we have here in the borderland what I consider to be an epidemic of drunk driving. It's something that I was talking with my wife about it a few days ago. Like, I'm curious if it's the same everywhere around the United States or it's just here. It's something that the city is working hard, of course, to fight. Law enforcement is working hard to fight, but it is incredibly concerning. We just left off the conversation before the break where here you are, a young man who's into gymnastics, you're an acolyte, you're driving a 1972 Ford Maverick, which, by the way, I didn't know what that was, so I looked it up online while you were talking, and that's a pretty cool car. But you made a decision, a poor decision, when you were 17 years old. You had some drinks, you smoked some pot, and you kept on going, and you ended up against a brick wall and then in the hospital. What would you say to 17-year-olds who might be just flipping through the stations right now and they're listening to this conversation and they're maybe toying with some of the things you were toying with, and they've been doing just fine, and quite frankly, they're enjoying it. What would you say to them?
Oh man, that's so tough to do, man, because that's exactly what I did the first almost 20 years after my injury, was just talk to a bunch of students, high school students, and what I was telling them, the way I communicated my story then, just like I was communicating it to you, there was some funny scenes there. There were some funny things that I did when I drank, and that's why I like to drink, because I thought I was funnier. I thought I was smarter. It gave me the illusion, that you're just telling you're the dude, you are the dude, you are the man, and stuff like that. So you really gotta, it's hard to tell a 17-year-old to see it all the way through, then what? Then what? Then what?
Right.
Because you have to see it through all the way through to that hangover you're gonna have, to the missed responsibilities you're gonna have, to the mistakes you're gonna make because you are intoxicated, and mistakes that can cause you to have a chair for life. Exactly. the poster read,
Yeah.
and trust me, I wasn't so keen on doing that poster because before that, Andy, I had a flyer that said drinking or drugging can kill or
Mm.
worse. And then there was a picture of me on it, as if
Oh, wow.
being me is worse than death. Being disabled is worse than death.
Wow.
And I don't believe that today. I
Yeah.
don't believe that today. And I don't think that we should try to scare our young people into getting straight, because that didn't work in the 80s either. Scared straight
Oh.
program does not work. It's almost like telling your kids, hey, I got that beer in the refrigerator. Don't touch it. What do you think he's going to do? Oh my God, that beer must be really important. I wonder what's in it. Oh man, just wonder. So what do you kids do? They go and they touch the beer, So I don't think that
Interesting.
whole logic works. I think we need to be honest. I think we need to be straightforward and simply ask our youth, think it through, my brother.
Mm.
Think it through, because what is it that you really want in life? Do you want to have a good night, and you want to have a good buzz tonight? Or do you want to have a good life? And do you want to
Yeah.
have a long life? And one of so many benefits. And then, and even before that, I really do think that we have to talk about God, because this is about a mindset that we
Mm.
have throughout our country, especially at this age, that we just think that we're invincible at 17. We can do whatever we want. Why do you think the
Mm.
military picks on those young people to go out and war? Because they get off on that mindset. So I don't want to get political here or anything, but
Yeah.
Andy,
No.
I
Yeah.
think when you answer the question, what would I say to a 17-year-old today? Think it through.
Yeah, I love that you're saying that, and I have to interject just briefly. I'm reminded of Colossians chapter 2, where it says, "Since you died with Christ, the elemental spiritual forces of this world, why, as though you still belong to the world, do you submit to its rules? Do not handle, do not taste, do not touch. These rules, which have to do with things that are all destined to perish with use, are based on merely human commands and teaching. Such regulations indeed have an appearance of wisdom, with their self-imposed worship, their false humility, and their harsh treatment of the body, but they lack any value in restraining sensual indulgence." And that's what I hear you saying. Just this idea of don't do it. What I heard you say is it actually draws attention to the vice
Mhm.
rather than focusing on something else. And what I'm hearing you say is focus on the life you have ahead of you and think about it.
Right. And educate these people, really have conversations. I mean, I can't tell you how endless I would tell parents, please have this conversation with your kids,
Mm.
but in a way where it's not just, hey, I don't want you to do it. When Students Against Drunk Drivers came out, they had a different type of logic around this, to have a contract with your parents, say that,
Yeah.
hey, I'm agreeing not to drink that night, but if I do, or if the person I'm driving with is drunk, can I call you to come pick me up no matter where I am? And there was some open-minded parents that agreed to something like this. And then there was some parents that said, absolutely not, because I feel like I'm still encouraging you to do it, to hang out
Mm.
with these types of people and so forth. So
Right.
there's always been a conflict around drinking and driving, especially when it's something that you do and you think that you could drive better, you could drive more alert. You think that, I still have control here. That's the
Right.
illusion. And you know what?
Wow.
Everything you just read there from the Bible, we don't want control of this world, man. We really need God we need to surrender to God and let
Yes.
Him guide us,
Right.
instead of thinking that we know what to do and I'll take it from here, God. I can't tell you how many times I go back and forth and taking the steering wheel from God. Oh, I got
Right.
this. Oh, this feels good. I got this, God. So we
Yeah.
constantly have this, and I encourage people to really start having conversations with God in prayer,
Right.
but start having a real personal relationship with Him, because that's the only thing that has saved me, is
Mm.
having a personal relationship with God. I didn't have that at 17, you know,
Right.
despite the fact.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think going back to your acolyting, you were saying you really did it so you could have a front row seat and check out the girls. You were maybe helping yourself to the wine, behind the back of the priest or whatever the case would be. And to young people who might be listening, look a little bit higher. There's something more there.
Oh my goodness.
The religion of your parents, which might seem so old and
You know what's
and
funny? You know
dusty.
what's even more interesting, Andy? The fact that there were kids when I was 17 that looked at me and goes, "Oh, Hector, man, you're such a waste. I can't believe you
Oh
do that.
wow.
You know, like you're a good gymnast, bro. Why waste your time on that?" You know, we used to call them the jocks, you know?
Mm.
And then there was other kids that, you know, they were scared of me. You know, they were scared of me just by me walking by. They were scared of me, like I was going to hit them or stuff like that. And we call those the nerds, you know? I can't tell you that today, those nerds and those jocks, you know, maybe some of the jocks are still got into a trouble mentality, but those nerds, man, unfortunately, that they were so isolated back in high school, but man, they found their way. And man,
Yeah.
some of my greatest friends today are what you would or I would call nerds back in the
Yeah.
80s.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Don't make fun of the nerds because they're the ones who will rule the world.
They will come back.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you're sharing this scene with us. You run into a brick wall. You're at the hospital. You have to throw up, and the nurse says essentially, "This is what you deserve for driving drunk." Take us from there.
You know, from that point on, you know, I spent about a month in ICU. When I was in the hospital, I broke my neck and I did damage to my fifth and sixth vertebrae. It was an incomplete break, meaning that I had some sensation below the level of injury. I'm paralyzed from the chest down. My hands are affected. Just, you know, trying to show your audience a little bit about my hands. You know, they're paralyzed in that position. From the chest down, I lost sensation throughout 80% of my body up until my nipples here. And thank God for the mind and the brain, you know, and my eyesight and my hearing and everything else like that. So once I was diagnosed as a quadriplegic, I didn't even know what a quadriplegic was. All right. Anything that they were telling me at the time while I was in the hospital went right over my head. I had no idea. All I wanted to know is why couldn't I move my legs? You know,
Mm.
why was I moving my legs, but they were involuntarily? I was having muscle spasms. You know, I had no control of my bowel and bladder. You know, why am I peeing on myself? Why are my bowels moving? And, you know, and I don't feel like I had to go to the bathroom, you know, and I had to get educated. So in regards to that, once I came out of the pneumonia, I had pneumonia, I had collapsed lungs when I got into the hospital. I was in ICU for a month because of the internal bleeding that I also had and so forth. I was on this thing called a striker frame bed where I had 2 screws screwed into the side of my head from the front and 2 screws in the back. And they had to stabilize my neck in that form. So instead of, you know, me moving or anything like that, they want to stabilize everything so I wouldn't move. And I was strapped down to the striker frame. And it was just like roasting a pig. You know, for 90 degrees, I'd face one wall. 2 hours later, they turned me again. I'd face the floor for 2 hours. Not 2 hours later, they come back in. I faced the other wall. And then for 2 hours again, I faced the ceiling. And I lived that way for several weeks until they got me out of the striker frame. By the grace of God, I did some surgery. Do you remember when President Reagan got shot and
Yeah.
Senator Brady got shot, and he turned out to be a traumatic brain injury and so forth? That same surgeon that operated on Senator Brady, by the grace of God, he was in a conference in Jersey, and when I had my accident and the doctors were looking at me, they had to get this striker frame out of the basement. So they haven't had an injury like this in who knows how many years, and they had to take that striker frame out of the basement. And this was a small hospital, and so anyway, one of the doctors on the floor apparently that went to the conference knew that this surgeon was here, and got in contact with him. He came to visit me. He did something. He asked for my parents' permission if we could do something that was exploratory surgery at the time, where most likely when an injury like mine happened, they would have to put people in these halos for 6 months, the most.
Yeah.
Halo was the same thing, same contraction I just told you about, but you would have to live in that thing for 6 months, and it had a big body breast on it, and your whole head was completely still for 6 months. And he didn't think that we had to go to that extreme, So he did a special surgery. We created his own bone material, and he was able to stabilize my neck where it was broken, and all I had to wear was a Philadelphia collar for about 3 of those months. And I got then transferred over to Kessler's Institute, and Kessler's Institute is where I really need to learn how to maneuver in a wheelchair, And when my family used to come, me and my brother look similar. I think I'm better looking than he is, but anyway, when I was in rehab, they would all come and visit me, and my brother would go to the front desk because, have you seen my brother Hector? And first, his nurses would always take a second look, and they go, "Wow, you really do look like Hector." And I go, "Yeah, we get that a lot." Anyway, they go, "Well, have you seen my brother?" And they go, "Well, you see all those scratches down the wall? He's learning how to use this motorized wheelchair." So I would follow all those scratches and dents down the wall, and eventually you'll run into them, So I was at Kessler Institute, same institute that Christopher Reeve was when he got injured back in the 90s. And I was there for about 6 months. And during my time there, during my 6 months there, in December, Channel 2 News, Jim Jensen at the time, he was one of the big anchor people on Channel 2 News in New York, and was looking for drinking and driving stories. There was a big push to try to prevent drinking and driving. We realized the big problem, and the problem was always there, Andy. The problem of drinking and driving was always there for years and years and years. The problem is that people got fed up of losing their loved ones in these accidents. And that's why Against Drunk Drivers was formed, and so forth. So anyway, I was at Kessler Institute. I knew the significance of the problem because there was already 4 people in rehab as a direct result of drinking and driving. 2 were from being intoxicated and diving into a shallow pool or a shallow river or whatever. And the other 2 were from also auto accidents. From those 4, they picked my story. I shared my story on Channel 2 News. And the next following days after that, I started getting letters from churches and high schools and saying, "Hey, Hector, when you get out of the hospital, would you come out and share your story with our kids?" So I became somewhat of the Jerry Lewis poster child for drinking and driving, unfortunately.
Wow.
Make an impact and would get people to think twice. And maybe it did. And I know it did, because years later, throughout the years, especially when I got out of the hospital, people would come up to me and goes, "Hey man, thank you for speaking at my school. You made a difference in my decision." But I've also remember one day when I was at Kessler's checking in and as an outpatient, I was going in for physical therapy, and there was a guy behind me, also quadriplegic, and he goes, "Hey, you're Hector, right?" I said, "Yes, I am." And he says, "You came to my school, you spoke." I didn't listen. I was in the back of my buddy's van one night, and we crashed, and I went all, I fell all over the place and broke my neck. Sorry, I didn't listen to you. And so when you have moments like that, you knew that God was in this somewheres.
Yeah.
God was in this. I mean, I went from, focusing on just losing the mobility and being paralyzed and asking God why, to the point of God was right there saying, "Hey, there is something I need for you to do while you're in this situation."
Right. So you're there in the hospital, and
Right.
they're already asking you to tell your story.
Yeah. At Kessler's, yeah.
What I guess inspired you to agree?
I think the only thing it was the whole, remember that whole mentality of wanting to be cool?
Yeah.
I want to show my strength. I want to show, hey, I'm okay. I could do this. I guess the thing was back then, Andy, was that I want to show people that I was okay. I was always trying to tell my mom and my dad, "I'm okay, Mom and Dad, I'm okay." But laying in my hospital bed at night, I really try to move those toes. I really try to, ask God, "Please tell me why. What do I do now?" That's the one thing I never lost. I never lost my belief that God had a reason, or there has to be a purpose for this, because sometimes we don't understand why bad things happen in this world. We don't understand why babies die in plane crashes. We just don't understand why people have to die at certain times. and so forth. So we don't sometimes understand God's will, and I don't think we are supposed to understand God's will. I think we're just supposed to believe that there's something, that God is still in this with us. He hasn't abandoned
Right.
us or anything like that. He is still here. Look for it. Listen,
Yeah.
see him. And I started seeing that in opportunities that were given to me, whether it was my first RN case manager that saw something in me. A couple of days ago, he saw that interview on Channel 2 News, and they were trying to figure out what was I going to do for the rest of my life. Other people, other vocational rehabs or other social workers saying, well, he could always do computer work. Like, really? That's all you see is just me sitting at a desk doing computer work, which which today is probably not a bad gig for anybody.
Yeah.
But
Right.
I think they were limited in what they saw. But this guy, Norman Wright, who was my first RN case manager, and his job was to help me out to figure out what was I going to do when I got out of rehab. And the first thing goes, Hector, I think you should stay in school. And I was getting tutored while I was still in the hospital at Kessler Institute. And that's what evoked the whole thing with President Reagan. I got a call from President Reagan right before graduation in June because I stayed studying. I went back to school when I got out of the rehab in March and April, and I graduated in June with my graduating class. And then
Wow.
I started making the story, and that's when President Reagan called me up in, like the day before graduation, and just called me. And my dad gave me the phone. He goes, "There's some guy on the phone playing a trick on you. I don't know, maybe it's your cousin Ray, saying it's the White House." And I get the phone, and I said hello, and I said, I don't know if this is Ray or not. I kept talking to myself. There's a secretary that gets on the phone saying that this is the White House, and the president would like to speak to you. He's going to be on the phone just a minute. He only has a couple minutes, but he wants to, congratulate you on going back to school. And I say, wow, this is really good. This is done really good. And he's on the phone, and he speaks to me, and he goes, I just wanted to congratulate you, young man, for doing the right thing despite what has happened to you and the choices that you made, and I was blown away, but at the same time, I didn't believe it until the next day at graduation. Again, thank you, Norman Wright, because Norman contacted all these news outlets, and I had 5, 6 news outlets in my front door covering my story about how I was going back to school.
Wow.
And I did my high school speech, and then there's other things that happen after that.
Yeah. So Hector, in your book, you describe this scene when you're wheeled out of the hospital for the first time, and you understand that your life is going to be different. And I found that to be so impactful because I think a lot of times when, of course, if I haven't lived through that experience. There are so many things I haven't thought about with that. What are some of the things you would want, I guess, the world to know about your experience, but also those who are in a wheelchair? How can we, I don't know, be better neighbors?
Yeah. Well, let's start removing some of the barriers. Thank God for the Americans Disability Act, because that at least started to bring the awareness. And I want to thank all my brothers and sisters who were advocates in the 60s that made that happen. Didn't happen until the 90s, but we were always there, whether we were crawling up the steps of the Capitol or something like that, asking for our rights, asking for, because when I got injured in 1982, there were no curb cuts, I lived in the hill, okay? And there were no programs out there. And if there were programs, I wasn't aware of them because I still had to deal with the whole mindset of where do I belong in this world now? And do I even want to be part of this world? There was a lot of depression, anxieties. Oh man, there was just so much, and even happened even 20, 30 years after my injury where I was still coping. And it's in these past 10 years since 2017 when I pretty much had to say, I'm not Catholic. I need something more than religion. I need a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And I went to the Oviedo City Church and I got baptized in 2017.
Yeah, you describe that story of being baptized also in your book. Tell us about that and the meaning behind it.
Well, the meaning behind it was when my friend, and I think you even know my good friend John Nasby, who was was part of this church, and he's the one that I really got to meet and to know, and he made it really safe for me to really just come out and really, know and understand what family was, a church family was, because it got to the point where I couldn't even hang out with certain family members for my own, biological family members, and so forth, because it was dysfunctional at the time, and it wasn't a good thing. So finally, when I moved to Florida, um, and so forth in 2000, and then it wasn't until 2017, until 17 years later, it took me to really say I need more than just me. I kept on depending on my own strength, my own willpower. I just couldn't do it anymore. I went through a very difficult marriage and so forth. But in 2017, when me and John were talking about getting baptized, Hector, how do you want to do this? How do you want us to pick you up? And how do we get you into how do we get you into the water and stuff like that? And I remember the parts in the Bible where Jesus was speaking at a house, and they brought this paralyzed guy, and they actually, dug a, they actually tore up the roof, and they put this paralyzed man, and they put him right through the roof because their faith was just so strong, and believing that, man, if he can just get to Jesus, he'll be all right,
Yeah.
and that's exactly what my life went to. I was already in my 50s. I was tired, man. I've been going back and forth with this whole addiction thing, and it was just so much dysfunction in my. I had some amazing times, really some hopeful times, but it kept swinging back and forth, back and forth. So in 2017, when I gave my life up to the Lord, I mean, I was done. I could really be done and surrender all that guilt, surrender that shame, surrender all that, and be forgiven for it. So me and John, we said, all right, man, if you want us to take you through the roof, we'll take you to the roof. In that sense, in that symbolic
Right.
sense. But what
Sure.
it really was, it was about, I think it was 4 or 5 guys at the time that I was really close to in the church, who were able to pick me up and
Mm.
put me into that water and be
Yeah.
baptized, and some of the guys try to warn me now, Hector, now when you get baptized, man, Satan's going to come after you a little bit stronger now, so you got to be ready, and stuff like that. I said, dude, I don't know what's going to happen, but man, I need this really bad. And I remember opening my eyes, coming up out of the water, and everything did seem so much brighter, so
Yeah.
much beautiful, and so forth. And I just felt presence,
Mm.
and it still chokes me up, and because I've had that personal presence of God in my life, how could I not continue to go on? So when you ask me, and what's my message out there for other people with disabilities? Same message that I would tell a young kid at 17. Let's keep moving forward, because that's exactly what we're to do. We're not to be stopped, and we're not to stop and think that it's over, because it's never over until it's over,
Mm.
and until that day comes, I expect to see Jesus. I expect to be with Jesus, as he told the man hanging right next to him, and so forth. So I think what I'm trying to develop right now is trying to build better programs for people with disabilities, especially those that are newly injured. Those are right now that if they're listening to this show and they're in rehab right now, and they just had some sort of accident where they lost the ability to walk or to see or to hear, or if there's a family member out there, wondering how they're going to figure this all out, man, there's some really great programs out there today. Reach out to your social worker. Say, man, I need to know all the resources that are out there that are going to help me to help me make a better life, because this just can't be it. I won't
Mm.
allow them to just be it. There
Right.
has to be purpose in this thing. And that's what I'm trying to help people with disabilities today, is to help them find their purpose, and even to become first-time published authors, to
Yeah.
share stories, because they're constantly asking me, just like today, Andy, you asked me to come on here and share my story. That's exactly what I'm doing. And that's what I'm trying to help other people with disabilities do, is to share their
So
story. It's not about the
amazing.
ability. It's not about losing your ability. It's about losing your identity. And we need to all find out that our identity is truly to be children of God. That's
Right.
still.
Amen. Amen. So, Hector, what I'm hearing you say is for a period of 35 years between the accident and 2017, it was a bit of a roller coaster ride.
What?
And you were I don't know how else to put it, a poster child for Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And you're pretty transparent that you continue to struggle with addiction for at least periods of time during those 35 years. And in 2017 is where you really came back to the Lord. Uh, Again, for maybe I feel like I really want to underline this. What was it that brought you to that point?
In Alcoholics Anonymous, they talk about, being sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Mm,
And that was it for me. I was so done, Andy, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I was tapped out. I was tapping out to the point where um in 2015, when I was going through my second marriage, um and I was struggling with that whole thing, I became very suicidal. I was already having ideas on how I can steer my wheelchair into the oncoming traffic. And I got home that day and I called up my doctor and I said, I'm in trouble mentally, emotionally. I'm not good. I'm not functioning well, you know, um, and even to the point where I was smoking crack. And I called my doctor and I told him I need help or it's not going to end well. He goes, Hector, can you get to the emergency room? And I said, yes, I can get to the emergency room. And I met him at the emergency room. I spent about a couple weeks in psychiatric. I did a year of outpatient mental health and then didn't want to be on those medications. And I was able to get weaned off those medications because I wanted to be in sound mind and body. And not too long before that, after that, is when I found John, I found Oviedo City Church, and I got baptized.
okay, yeah, it's like we said at the beginning of the program, these very difficult stories to talk about
Yeah.
are often the ones with the most profound levels of hope. Hector, we're here in the most bilingual city in the nation. You speak Spanish.
Mi gente, sí.
Yeah. So just share what Jesus means to you in the minute we have left in Spanish for our audience.
Yo doy la perdón a mi madre que no está aquí hoy conmigo vivo, porque si ella puede iba a oírme, yo creo que ella me puede oír. Que yo quiero dar la gracia a mis padres, porque ellos fueron los unos que sufrieron. Y eso porque yo veo a Jesucristo como mi Padre y mi Dios, porque yo soy un hijo de Dios y yo lo creo hoy. Y mis padres trataron a decirme ese mensaje tan simple, que yo iba a ser, que yo iba, un hijo de Dios, y yo no lo creí. Por favor, y si tú me oyes hoy, si tú me sabes la historia hoy, pues, por favor te pido que búscate la fe y no pierdes la fe, porque eso que pasó con la historia mía, que yo perdí la fe. Y hoy yo solo quiero dar la gracia a Jesucristo. Y por favor, si oyes este mensaje, búscalo hoy.
Amen. Amen. Hector, thank you for this conversation. The book is Beyond the Chair, Thriving Through the Transition with God. The author is our guest today, Hector del Valle. So many other things we could have talked about today, but this hour has really flown by. Again, the book is Beyond the Chair. Author is Hector del Valle. And Hector, you also gave this call to action for folks who maybe were recently injured to reach out to their social worker, make sure they're aware of all the options, services that are available to them. And then you're saying what you're really focusing on now is really helping them find their potential in the Lord.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if there's anybody out there that's hearing me and would like to speak to me, you can reach me at my website, hdvspeaks.org.
Okay. hdvspeaks.org. Yeah. Okay. Well, Hector, thank you so much for your time today. Truly enjoyed this conversation. As we always say, let's learn to love our city and love our neighbors and give God all the glory. This has been 915 Talk.
You have been listening to 915 Talk, a production of Desert Voice Media. To listen to this or any previous edition of 915 Talk, just visit desertvoice.media and click on the 915 Talk link. Let's continue to learn to love our city, love our neighbors, and give God all the glory.